Welcome to the Sale and Scale Marketing Podcast. My name is Dmitry Smirnov. I'm your host, along with Jaron here. And we're super excited to have Hakim on with us. Hakim is a executive coach, and he's led multiple lives. And once you actually get a chance to talk to him and hear a little bit more about his stories and the different things that he's been involved in, you'll be very impressed. So, Hakim, do you want to go ahead and start with a little bit of your background and how you got started?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for having me here today. Yeah, you said led many lives, and immediately start flashing through all of these different things I've done in my life that have gotten me to where I am now. And I did a presentation a while back called "Ditch the Pitch and Embrace Your Career Story." And the idea is you've got to really understand your full story, your full trajectory that's led you to where you are now, so that when you are doing that pitch, which there is value in having that pitch, I don't mean ditch it completely, you can infuse this understanding of the twists and turns that your life has taken that's gotten you to where you are now, and you can love it. So I think when you mentioned that, just briefly, I thought of all of these different roles I've played, and maybe we'll get into some of that, maybe we won't. But my background is executive education. I've been doing executive education, leadership, and management training for lawyers, specifically legal professionals, for the last 2 decades, and done that at some very well-known, very reputable, and recognizable institutions. And as I started to think about the way I was creating this vision for my own career, my own future, I realized that I wanted to do executive coaching for not just people in the legal profession, but leaders across industries, and do it with my freedom and flexibility of business, being a business owner. So that's what's led me to where I am now.
Well, I know that you had spent some time at Harvard, right? So tell us a little bit about that and what you were doing there.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people who either went to Harvard or worked at Harvard always try to resist the urge of dropping the H bomb and 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 playing that up. But yeah, since you mentioned it, yeah, I was at Harvard Law School for about 8 years. Again, as a non-lawyer, as a non-Ivy League guy, we'll say. And I came in as a program manager to work on a program that was studying the profession. So, really, our unofficial tagline was "We study lawyers, not law." So, it was the psychology of lawyers, the sociology of the profession, the impacts of globalization on the profession. And then I started to move into this space of leadership and management training, because I started to work with Harvard Law School executive education, where they were bringing in elite lawyers from around the world to come in, and all the things that they weren't learning in school as they became lawyers, they now realize in their professions that they really needed to understand about themselves and about how they lead themselves, how they lead others. So I ended up getting to work on a lot of that. I had a lot of donor and funder relationships that I managed. I managed the board. I was doing finance and operations. I was sort of this jack of all trades, maybe king of nothing or king of everything or whatever it might be. But I had my hands in a lot of different things, which was really exciting because I learned a lot about myself. I sometimes refer to my time at Harvard as like ego boot camp, because if you want to learn how to manage your ego and other people's egos, what better place than there?
All right. So kind of let's segue into a little bit more about your business now. Okay.
Sure.
So on that side of it, do you want to just give us a little bit of a rundown or talk about your company first? Give us a quick synopsis of it and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an executive career and leadership coach. I work with clients one on one, typically to enhance their leadership skills, but also to raise their awareness around what it means to lead yourself effectively so that you can then lead others effectively. I think it's really important that we learn how to lead ourselves before we can lead others. And that's come out of referencing that Harvard time. We would have these big programs, 30, 40 people, and I would notice everyone getting obviously so much value from those sessions. But then we'd go out and do a coffee break, and we'd go to a happy hour, we'd go to a private dinner, and then people would corner you and say, "Can I talk to you about this subject or that subject?" Because they really wanted to talk about it one on one in a way that related to them. So I love the one on one work. I also do one to many leadership training as well. So I do that with companies and corporations to offer group training around leadership skills. I also work with a partner organization of mine out of the UK. So the business, as I launched it in 2019, sort of came out of this. Okay, well, there are people in my network that I could I could connect with and could coach one-on-one. But then I've had to start to figure out how to scale, how to build my brand, how to really start to market this in a way so it wasn't just me going through my own personal Rolodex. That's maybe an old school reference, but this virtual Rolodex, we'll say, and realize that I needed to be accessible and to be able to tap into audiences and markets beyond just what was in my phone or in my my contact list.
So, so who would you say are your best types of clients that you like to work with?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think when I think about coaching, for a very long time, coaching was a punitive thing. So someone wasn't performing properly or they weren't producing the right results, you'd say, okay, we're going to put you on an improvement plan and we're going to get you a coach. You're going to work with them for 6 months. And if we don't see an improvement, you're out of here. Whereas now, I think companies are recognizing that why am I going to pay for a coach for somebody who we already know isn't meeting our standards? So there isn't the interest to invest in somebody who we already know isn't meeting those standards. The investment is for coaching of those people that they see potential in. They're high performers, they're high achievers. They want to retain that talent. They want to keep those people around so they can offer them, as I call it, the gift of coaching. Look, you've been doing really well. We see you, we value you, we want to develop you. We're going to get you a coach versus we're going to get you a coach to fix you. So it's a long way of answering the question. Those people that I work with are typically people who see the value in leveling up. They want to improve upon, they want to go from good to great.
So, based on that, just to jump a little bit deeper into that point, so do you feel it better to work with clients or companies and explain to them the benefit of, shall we say, quote unquote, using the farm system? You're farming you're actually building your talent from the ground up from the moment they come in.
Absolutely. It's extremely, as you both may know, extremely expensive to hire people and onboard people. And it's really extremely even more expensive to fire and then rehire for that position. So
Yep.
if you have talent in-house that you can recognize and then you can develop and you can create the right environment and the right resources for them to want to stay and want to produce their best work, then you start to build a culture, and you start to build a lot of sort of brand loyalty in house.
Yeah, and I like that you emphasize that you prefer to work with upcoming leaders and people that are already doing well versus just being that penalty in that corporate structure for being
Yeah,
being the
yeah,
person that isn't doing so well. So they're trying to give you a last chance. So for you, that would be like a very negative connotation, being associated with those people, and I can
it would
imagine that.
be. It would be, and there are lots of coaches who do that and do phenomenal work in that area. But for me, I think of it as like I don't want to be the king of broken toys, and that's not to dismiss people's ability to recover and to improve. Everybody has the capacity to do that, but I like the idea of rather than trying to most of the time those relationships are a little strained at first in the coaching
Okay.
relationship because they've been told they have to coach with you. So now they're
Hmm.
already coming into this a bit reluctant. So you've got to gain their trust in a much more challenging way versus someone who says, you know what, I love what I do, I'm good at it, but I feel like there are things that I could really improve upon, and I'm not even sure what. I want to work with a coach to identify what those blind spots are, where those areas of improvement could be. Let's get into this together. And that just from the minute you start engaging in coaching, they're already benefiting.
Okay. Very nice. I mean, I like your approach 100% on all of that. I definitely agree with entire sentiment of just not having to deal with rebuilding that entire trust from that negative side. So it
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, so now let's kind of start jumping towards the real purpose of the call, right? Our,
Mm,
our, our interview. We want to talk a little
yeah.
bit more and give some value to our viewers and listeners who are either coaches, consultants, or anybody that really works in a business where
Mm,
they are the product, they are the service, right? And the type of marketing that happens for these types of industries and these types of individuals is, I would like to say, very different than the traditional marketing for a company,
yeah.
right? So, we really wanted to jump into, because I know you do other things, like you have your own podcast, things like that, right? So I wanted to really sit down to talk with you, Hakeem, and figure out what is it that you do that's working, what is it that you do that doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
this podcast is about learning the real things that go into marketing. So, we're not interested in buzzwords. We're not interested in any of the things that just everybody thinks that they have to do,
Right.
but the real substance of marketing, like the
Yeah.
real things, and even things that people don't consider marketing but truly are.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with. I know we had discussed previously. Your business is highly referral based, right?
Yeah.
Since you were talking about your Rolodex and things like that. So, what were the first steps that you really went through to start building your business, especially back in 2019 when you started?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when you think about the businesses that you were listing off, coaches, consultants, wealth and financial advisors, those people, that know, like, and trust factor is everything for us, because you're not going to get into a coaching, speaking specifically to coaching because it's my niche. It's You're never going to get into coaching with somebody if you don't know, like, and trust them. It's a significant investment of time and money and energy and vulnerability, et cetera, et cetera. And in order to create that trust, when the know, like, and trust, it's really important that you are willing to to highlight what makes you you, what makes me unique, compared to other coaches. So rather than go out there and just, do a bunch of TikTok videos and try to be, noticed, I really started when I first started, I started to just connect with people who I knew already knew and liked me and probably trusted me, and started having some of those conversations to determine whether or not that really was true. And as those conversations evolved, we got into the conversation then around, so what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this. Great. What are you doing? I'm doing this. And then as a coach, I start to ask the coaching questions that I typically ask. How's that going for you? And then the conversation naturally evolves into, well, I'm struggling a little bit with this, or man, I've got these big goals, but I'm just not sure how to position myself to attain them. And then the question of, would you like some help with that, comes up, and we
Mm-hmm.
start to develop relationships. And as we do, these are now all evangelists of what my coaching is and what they've experienced through my coaching. So right off the bat, you can tap into your really close knit network to say, these are people that I don't have to convince them that they know me, like me, and trust me. That's already there. Let's just build on that and then let them take it themselves to create some
Mm-hmm.
referrals and some more introductions.
I'm going to inject some marketing terminology into there.
Please.
So definitely number one, what you talked about is approach your sphere of influence, your current sphere of influence. Approach them, start conversations, build relationships with them even further. Ask them how they're doing. Listen, right?
You got it.
Okay. Then you're going to develop those relationships further until the point where they can start seeing some value from you allowing them to open up, right? Yeah, I like that. I like that for sure. Okay. Very, very interesting. And then when you ask for if they need help, what's your typical strategy for that? I mean, obviously it's like that's where it starts, if done wrong, starts sounding salesy, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think when I say that I ask, would you like help with that? There are instances where someone is clearly putting themselves in a position to get to look for help. They're asking for help, and to leave
Mm-hmm.
them just dangling out there would be torture. Would be sort of cruel.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, well, are you getting help with that, or would you like help with that? Other times the conversation naturally evolves where, if you're using another example, like an electrician, and you're walking around the house and you're catching up with an old friend and they're showing you their new house and they're like, yeah, and there's some things I want to do, take care of this, take care of that, take care of this. And you know that it's all in the scope of the work that you do. And you just ignore it instead of saying, that's what I do. I
Mhm.
could help you fix that wiring. I could help you fix that switch. To ignore that because you're worried that it might sound salesy is a missed opportunity, one. And two, sometimes you don't have to even say, can I help you with that, can I help you with this? Just the fact that they know that you're an electrician, they might say, is that something you could fix easily? Is that
Yeah.
something that you know how to deal with? So as a coach, if I'm in that conversation and it's evolved into them sharing a bit more openly about what their struggle is or what their goal is that they're working towards, they may themselves often say, how do you work with your clients like that? How can I work with you on something like that? And then you can say, well, if you want to shift the conversation, and I'm always very conscious about shifting that conversation so they know that they're shifting with me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you want to shift the conversation into how I work with my clients and how we might work together, let's go ahead and do that.
So now,
Okay.
so working off that, and building on your core sphere, as you said, it's core sphere of relationship.
Yeah.
Have you been in the position where you have actually been the shall we say the protagonist and walked up to one of your people and said, listen, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. I would like to work with you on helping you becoming even better at what you do. How do you kind of approach that, or do you just like shoot for it and hope for the best?
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of that, but I think it's really important, and I talk about this in my coaching, I talk about this in my training. In intentional interactions, the way in which we think about how we communicate, why we're communicating, when we're communicating is so important. And it certainly is, I'm sure you both can appreciate in marketing,
Yeah.
and certainly is when you're in conversation with somebody. So if someone's in the middle of a conversation, a networking event, and I know that there's something I could do to help them because I've seen what they've been posting online or something, and I just interrupt the conversation so I could help you, it wouldn't land, obviously.
Right.
But if you get into a conversation and you're saying, I've been noticing that this is something that you share, or I can imagine that in your role you face this challenge. Is that true for you? And they'll say, yeah, that is true for me. That really resonates. And then all of a sudden you realize that you're both on the same page. And there are many times where I've actually said to somebody, and it takes a bit of your own mindset work to do, but to actually say, I'd love to work with you on that, or I'd love to be able to help you if you're open to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are actually waiting for you to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of solo entrepreneurs, especially who work in this space, don't want to be too pushy,
Right.
and they don't want to be too salesy, but
They
also
don't want to.
really. So
Yeah.
please,
I feel like people feel like they're soliciting too much.
exactly.
But I do agree with you. There are moments where somebody might not naturally on their own engage, and they are looking for you to offer,
Yeah.
what you think you can bring to the table. So, but I feel like a lot of that's situational, and you have to be able to, per se, read the room. If that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Read the room, read the person, and I think that if you think about it though in terms of service versus selling, or serving versus selling,
yeah.
then you realize that you're actually coming from a place of just wanting to help. And that can be with any service, any product. If they say no, that's okay. But at least you've made that offer to them. And then there's not just sort of this unspoken wondering whether or not you can help me. I mean, some of my clients wonder if they're clients I would work with. They're wondering, am I the kind of person that you would work with? And they're too insecure, too shy, too hesitant to even ask that question. So when I then offer, I'd love to work with you on that, or you're someone I'd love to work with, all of a sudden you can see their shoulders relax and they're like, oh, okay. And you could think about that even in the context of like a financial advisor. Maybe someone thinks, well, I don't have enough money for you to even manage effectively, or it would be boring to you. And then they missed out on that relationship, versus the financial advisor saying, look, I work with people in all from all walks of life, and at all levels economically. What can I do for you? Can I help you? All of a sudden they realize, oh, there is someone here who sees me and that can help me.
I think that's a good point, because a lot of people only want to focus on like their key market, the people that are already ready to purchase. And one
Yeah.
of the biggest drawbacks in doing that is, typically in any funnel, it's only about 3% of people actually physically ready to transact in almost anything
Yeah.
that they're doing. And you're missing out on
Yeah.
that 97% of people that are in that potential buy zone, but they need a little bit more development. They need the relationship. They need some more time, or whatever the situation is, and they could be perfect buyers for you and work with you, but you just don't give them a
Yeah.
chance. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Isn't I think there's some statistic, and you guys may know this right off the top of your heads, but like it takes like 7 follow-ups or 11 follow-ups or something in order for someone. So if you think about it in that context, if you don't say anything because you're both trying to do this, very, very, generous, gentle, considerate dance,
Yeah.
you're missing it. And actually, when you say it, it may not result in that person being like, oh, well, I'm so glad that you offered. Yes, send me the invoice. But it may all of a sudden open up the possibility. Oh, I didn't even know that was a possibility. Now I'm considering this as an option for me. I didn't even know that you did that. Oh, let's learn more. And that just facilitates another conversation.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. So we've been talking about so far kind of like leveraging your existing, Rolodex, your book of business, your sphere of influence, right? Now, alongside of that, I'm sure there's some hiccups that occur when trying to work with people you already know, right? Obviously, some people that maybe you're too close to them, friends, family, and that could jeopardize some relationships, or some
Mm.
people just, obviously they see a price tag involved. They're like, oh, but why am I paying full price? This and that. So there's a lot of things that occur in those situations. What are some ways that you mitigate that type of friction with relationships? And what's the best way to navigate that without, obviously hurting relationships if they're not a good fit?
Yeah, I think the one thing I can say to simplify that in an answer is clarity is kind.
Yeah.
So be as clear as you possibly can be about your expectations, their expectations. This is something that I've had to work on extensively to go from getting a paycheck from a traditional 9 to 5 and then being out here and it's like eat what you kill and you've got to have these conversations. You got to figure out how to navigate these relationships, whether they're personal or professional. What I found is the being transparent, being authentic, being clear about what I expect out of this conversation or what I hope may result from this conversation allows people just to say yes or no. And that clarity from their end then avoids any of the weird feelings or maybe this got a little awkward or I haven't heard from them. And that's something that I'm constantly reminding myself of because it's easy to get into a conversation and think, oh, I can help this person regardless of what your relationship is with them and
Mm-hmm.
just lunge in. And then you've sort of misread the room a little bit and now it's a little awkward. Or you lunge in, they're all for it and they say, yes, let's do it. And then the relationship is based on, well, I'll call you, don't call me, or it's not a matter of if but a matter of when, and then you're playing this. Now it's a little awkward when this is somebody and you should be able to pick up the phone and just call.
Yeah.
Do that, have the conversation, be clear, because that will avoid any of those sort of like unknowns.
So now that's a good segue from that uncomfortableness, right? Now I've seen a lot of people do this instead of only pushing for business with the initial sphere of influence, asking your sphere of influence to open up their Rolodexes, open up their book of
Absolutely.
business. And that segues perfectly into referral marketing, right? Referral marketing is probably the biggest way that a lot of coaches, consultants, even businesses in general, get new clients, right? So tell us a little bit more about your experience with referral marketing. First, let's start with on the direct B2C side, so like
Mm-hmm.
your end consumer, and then let's
Yep.
also after that segue into the B2B side, meaning who are you, like what kind of potential businesses can refer you
Yeah.
clients, right?
Yeah.
And how do you foster those relationships as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that B2B as strategic partners, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, the B2C, so me to my current clients or past clients, the conversation that I typically do is a very casual catch up. How are you? What's going on? And then once we've done that and we've regained that connection, that rapport is there, asking them how have things been since coaching, or how, what are you getting out of coaching? And we're using myself as an example. And then as they presence themselves, and this could be, IT consulting, or this could be, wealth management, whatever it might be. Once they presence themselves to what you help them to do, now they're back in that headspace. Now they're thinking about, wow, before I met you, before I started working with you, I was doing this or wasn't doing that. And once I got to work with you, I was able to create all of this.
Hmm.
Wow, yeah, that's really great. I haven't really thought about that. And then now you're in a place where they can start to make the connections and sort of connect some of those dots and draw some of the parallels between them and other people in their network
Yep.
who might benefit from that same experience. So when you start to ask them, who else do you know who might benefit from a conversation with me?
Yep.
All of a sudden they start to think, wow, I'm sort of swimming in this good feeling of what we created in our coaching or what we're currently creating in our coaching. Bobby or Jane, would really benefit from having that conversation with you because I know that they're sort of experiencing a lot of the same things that I did. And I
Hmm.
think that just opens their mind to where else am I not seeing people who I can refer to my coach and be a hero to them. It's a win-win-win-win-win all around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that once you presence them to what the benefits are, then they can start to look for those benefits for others.
Sure. Sure.
I like
On
that.
the B2B side, the strategic partners, my approach to that is really pure relationship building.
Okay.
So really establishing that know, like, and trust piece, but then also in our conversation describing my, as you know, avatar, my ideal client. And as I describe that ideal client, that person in the call with me will either say, wow, that sounds a lot like me. Or they'll say, you know, we work with a lot of people like that. They would really benefit from talking to you. And
Okay.
you can make it much clearer for them versus, and you know this to be true in all of our networking groups that we're in. You'll ask like, well, who's your ideal client? And you'll just say, well, you know, I'd love to be talking to CEOs and COOs, but it doesn't paint the picture of who that person might be and the feeling that they're experiencing that would drive them to needing a financial advisor, an IT consultant, a coach, whatever it might be. But when you can paint that clear picture for that business strategic partner, then that person starts to saying, not looking at titles or industry or specifics like those, but actually thinking about the individual as a person. Wow, that person and their struggles or their needs. Again,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be coaching specific. They would really benefit from working with you. Let me make some introductions.
And I would love to add one more point back to kind of both
Please.
sides of the
Yeah.
B2B and the B2C. Number one is you're not going to get referrals most times if you don't ask. Okay, you have to. You cannot be shy. You cannot be like scared or anything. You gotta ask for the referrals. Nobody thinks about it. It's not in their normal mindset unless they're in a group such as like BNI, right? Like BNI is a perfect segue into kind of like back into the B2B side where it's
Yeah.
strategic relationships and your goal is to refer business to other people. But the average person, your average client, not everybody is a BNI person. Not everybody is in that constant mindset of how can I help someone else that I know, right?
Yeah.
Not all the time, but if you open them up to it, I feel like most people will get a yes or some referrals through that, and that doesn't mean it's perfect every time.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I feel,
And it's not immediate sometimes because
yeah,
people are busy, but you're playing a bit of the long game. Again, like I talked about those evangelists early on in my coaching, those were people out there who had experienced me, whether through coaching or through, you know, several catch-up calls, and they were thinking, man, I haven't talked to that guy in a long time. I'm glad he's doing what he loves. You know, I'm gonna keep him in mind, and then they do, because even in the hardcore networking groups where you're recording that into the app and you're, you know, thanks for closed business and all of the things, people are busy and they're building their own businesses, so that, like
yeah,
you said, if you don't ask, then it's not going to be top of mind for them in the way that it would be if you had a conversation about that and they remember that conversation, they take that into other conversations, and now they're thinking, oh, there's the connection. Let me put this person in touch with Dimitri. Like
yeah,
this is who I think he wants to talk to based on our conversation around his ideal client.
yeah. Well, and then the final bit to add to that is usually, and what I usually recommend. This is strictly from training from BNI and things like that. Don't only make it one-sided. So don't only
Of
ask for
course.
referrals. Always
Yeah,
try to ask and understand about their business. How can you send them clients? How can you help them? Right.
absolutely.
If you make it a two-way street, people are a lot more receptive. 100%.
Um, absolutely. Yeah, no, there isn't anything more true. You know, the you know, giver's gain motto,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
whether it's BNI or anywhere else. It's I wish we could all have that, because I think if you're coming into every relationship, every conversation, gimme, 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 people are going to start to tune that out pretty quick. And you're going to
Oh,
start
yeah.
to get a reputation as someone who's just taking, 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 and never giving. And when that can be value, that can be what you share online, that can be in those conversations that we're talking about right now. But if you're adding value to those people that you meet and that you connect with and you're building relationships with, they're much more, like you said, much more inclined naturally just to say, you know, I really appreciate how that person showed up for me and how that person made that connection for me. I'm going to do the same in return.
No. All
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. So,
So go ahead.
so taking what your current model, you know, we've been speaking about direct communication, either B2C, B2B. your core building of relationships of, as you call it, your Rolodex or your contact list. But now looking at your marketing for yourself, what kind of channels do you kind of focus on? Is it I would take it. I'm predominantly. I'm getting the feeling you're very LinkedIn based. But what other channels of communication, being a person in your line of business, would you focus on or recommend people who are looking in this direction? Not to go
Yeah.
like, do you want to go on Snapchat? Is it something you would do? Versus something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to think about where your audience hangs out, and I'll sort of I'll get a bit I'll sort of narrow that down as I talk about it. But I think you're absolutely right. Social media, and Dimitri and I had a great conversation about this. There is the need. It is imperative that there be social proof, and that was a word
Yeah.
that you shared with me, and I love that, because I was just using the word sort of presence, but the presence is meant to be there to show that this is actually a space that you work in, that you're an authority in this space, that you're credible, that you have, worthwhile connections, that this is how you show up in the world.
Yeah.
So I think that having that presence, having that social proof is necessary, because when I meet someone at a breakfast and we talk for half an hour and we walk away and he's got a business card of mine in his pocket, he gets home, what's he going to do? He's going to go online, he's going to look me up.
Yep.
So he's gonna want to learn about me beyond the quick interaction that we had this morning over breakfast, and he's gonna find what I posted most recently. He's gonna see what the engagement is on that. He's gonna see, where I direct people to resources, or what value am I adding beyond just trying to grab clients. And I
Yep.
think that's such an important piece for me, because not only does it build my brand, which, I love my logo, I love my brand, I want to get it out there, sure, but it's also, and this is true of anybody who's having to sell themselves as the product or the service, people need to experience you. They need
Yep.
to learn about you, and they can't do that in a half an hour phone call or a half an hour, breakfast side chat. They're going to go online and they're going to scroll.
Right.
And they want to have some exposure to you. They may not watch every video you've ever posted, but they're going to get a feel for how you show up, and that's going to then compel them to want to do that follow up and reach out and say, this seems like someone I want to talk to more. Someone
Yeah.
I want to have a relationship with.
Right. So
And I think it's relevant not only in coaching and in professional services like that. It's hyper relevant in any kind of
100%.
business,
mhm.
because let's say you're gonna hire a social media firm. What's the first thing you're gonna do? You're gonna look at their social profiles. You're gonna see if they actually have followers, if they're actually posting, what kind of content they do. You can see the quality. It's the same thing. Like and you mentioned another thing, like show up as a person. And that's another thing that I personally feel a lot of brands don't do.
Mm,
They think it's only about the brand, but your brand is only as strong as the people behind it.
that's right. That's
So,
well said. Yep. Yeah, I
so
think
they
when you
neglect
think
that.
about the brand, I think you're right. When you think about the brand, a lot of people, and this is true of companies that I work with, they talk about their values, their mission, their vision, all this stuff. Yes, it looks nice on the front page of their website, but how are you infusing that into how you serve your customers, how you solve problems for them, how you interact with them?
Yep.
And I think that it's absolutely true that if you can show the human side, especially the way that consumers are looking at products and services these days, if
Yep.
you can show the human side of it, and there are actually humans behind it. Yes, we know all about AI. That the people who are buying are still humans. They want to
Yeah.
they want to be connected with on that level. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Now, that was kind of funny. You mentioned AI. Any correlations with your industry and AI, and is it impacting you guys at all?
I mean, it's going to impact everything, but I think a lot of people are using AI to generate content online.
Yep,
Um,
for sure.
I think if not done well, people can see through that very, very easily. Um, but I think that AI is going to, at least for coaches, you can easily go on ChatGPT, especially ChatGPT 4, and be coached. Ask ChatGPT all kinds of coaching questions and get some really thoughtful responses. But people are still going to desire that human side of it. They're still going to want to feel like they're being
Right.
actually seen and heard and supported. and it's not just, input output. And that's the input output piece is exactly what you're talking about, Dimitri, which is this is much more than just a brand or a logo. This is really about what's the depth of
Yep.
what you offer that resonates with me.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing with ChatGPT and all of those things, the AI, I like to say that they're tools. So they're only as good as the user and how you use
Yeah.
it. And one of the key things that I'll tell anybody in any industry is, and pardon my French, read the damn text. don't don't just copy
Yeah.
and paste it, put it into
No.
your social media. It's the worst thing you could possibly do. Humanize it, read it,
Yeah.
review it. It's great for ideas, things like that. But
Yeah.
it will never replace a real
No.
marketer or a real person.
No, it's true.
So, very, very interesting. Now, kind of, let's go back to talking about like what all do you do? I know you do like you have your own podcast.
Yep.
I know that you're always on LinkedIn. You're publishing there. I'm following you there as well. Tell us a little bit more about all the things that you do in your digital presence and why you specifically do it.
Yeah. So to go back to John's question, the sort of the narrowing down that you can do, there's the social presence, social proof piece, but then it's really, that your audience is primarily on LinkedIn, but where are they on LinkedIn? Are they in small groups? Are they on association pages? Are there external links from those that then take you into an association homepage where there are events or a message board, or there's a newsletter that goes out bi-weekly that you can get on? And that's where I've started getting a lot more creative, where I was starting to feel like what I was doing online was a check the box exercise. So I was kind of like, okay, cool, all right, I'm done for the day. It doesn't end there, right? I mean, it takes follow-up, it takes presence beyond just being there. So I think what I'm finding is when someone engages with a post, for example, I then see that as an opportunity, like, okay, let's drill down now. Where's that person coming from? What are the reoccurring themes that I'm seeing people talk about or respond to a certain post with? Are there similar titles by those people or industries that they're coming from? Are they part of a particular association? And then I start to play in that space where I realize I'm not trying to bury myself in busy work, but I think that if you can identify places where that presence is going to be sort of more narrow focused, your online presence gets to be more narrow focused into where people are going to see you there and see you here. Now there starts to become a little bit of a resonance. They're like, okay, I've seen that guy online. I've seen his stuff come through. Hey, now he's showing up on my association newsletter. Hey, now I see him being featured as a thought leader this month. That gets people saying, this guy's kind of everywhere. This business is everywhere. I want to find out more about them. And then they start to do their digging and they book a call and things sort of evolve from there.
Back to that 7 touches that you talked about earlier.
Totally.
And that's
Exactly
actually
right.
evolved. It's first it started like 6, and then 7, and
Yeah,
then like
yeah.
every year they're like, oh,
Yeah.
11,
Yeah.
12.
Right, yeah.
As our our ability to concentrate narrows down further and further with social media, we have to see somebody way more before we
Yeah.
notice them.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true.
absolutely. Yeah, and people are getting busier and busier these days because of social media, and they're jumping from platform to platform, and they're looking at multitude of things. And we look how we're all multitasking all day, So
Yeah.
that level of interaction goes up, and it's
Yeah.
you just got to keep drilling down and keep the outreach going.
Yeah. And I think that's on the sort of the online digital side, and then I supplement that with in-person stuff. And I think when I get feedback from people as I see them in person,
Mm-hmm.
where they'll say, yeah, hey, I've been seeing you everywhere on LinkedIn lately. It doesn't result in a sort of a one-to-one, you see my post, great new client, but that person then is thinking about you more often. They're seeing you more often. When they have a conversation with somebody who touches on something that they know that you help with because you've been putting that message out there over and over again, they're more inclined to say, who I've been seeing a lot of lately, and it's exactly what you're talking about. This guy Hakim, you should talk to him. And then that connection just gets more naturally made.
So now,
and the quality of that lead is 10 times better.
100%. So
than
true.
Yeah.
traditional advertising and things like that. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's I feel like that's where coaches, consultants, we have a lot of busy work that occurs right in the day to day, especially with trying to qualify clients, trying to figure out who we want to work with, because it's a two-way street. Like somebody might be interested in working with you, but you might not even want to work with them too.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's another thing.
Yeah.
How do you figure out who you want to specifically work with and who not to?
Yeah. It takes a lot of conversation. I have toyed with. I go back and forth, between conversation and doing something more formal in terms of like an assessment.
Okay.
Um, I think for other businesses, depending on who your clients are, assessments can work extremely well. You don't want to have someone up doing a an SAT type assessment for 3 hours at a time. But if it's a short qualifier that gives you a good sense of there's a yes no, there's a yes no qualifier answer in there that that if it's a no, it's this isn't someone you're going to work with. You can secretly slip that in there, and it will be an indicator to you that this isn't somebody who's really ready to work with us in this way, or is looking for something slightly different. I like to get at that through conversation, but I have had clients ask for an assessment. Do you have an assessment that you work with, or that might be helpful for me to look through? And I'll send it to them. And sometimes they'll come back and they'll pass, quote unquote, pass it with flying colors, and I'll say, yeah, I kind of knew this person was someone I wanted to work with. Or something that they share in there is surprising to me, and I realize, okay, that's something that we want to drill down on more, to get, again, going back to this clarity piece,
Right.
we want to get clear on, so that there aren't any misaligned expectations here, so that they think they're getting this, I think I'm giving that, and then we find ourselves halfway through a coaching engagement, and expectations aren't being met. So it's all about just being clear about that up front.
So, a kind of a question from just popped into my head. So, are there any industries that kind of took you by surprise? Like, this is an industry that I never thought of, and wow, I'm actually really interested in working in this industry, and vice versa, where there's been industries like, I want to get into this industry, and then you're like, you know what, that's not exactly what I'm going to pull back a little bit from that industry.
Yeah. So the legal profession, to answer your last question first, legal profession is one that I worked in for, as I mentioned, almost 20 years. I know that profession very well. I know those professionals very well. I know how they think, how they communicate. I really enjoyed while I was working in that profession. They're a very challenging group of professionals to market coaching to. There's a lot of hesitation around being vulnerable. There's a lot of feelings around confidentiality. So that's just sort of ingrained into the way that they think and the way that they communicate. So all of a sudden, sharing openly and being an open book and fully transparent with somebody can be more challenging. I think that's
Hmm.
becoming less the case lately. So because of my background, legal professionals naturally find me, but that's not a group that I'm choosing to target anymore in the way that I first was when I first started coaching, because there was a lot of education happening,
Hmm.
where I was like trying to educate them about what coaching is and what it isn't, and reassuring them and trying to explain and contextualize coaching versus just wanting to give them the experience and them being open to that.
Hmm.
So that's one group. The other group that surprisingly I ended up working with, that I'm going to probably put some more effort and time into, is the craft brewing industry, actually. So
Interesting.
one of my clients is a SaaS company out of California. Um, they're called the Fifth Ingredient. They're a fantastic company, and I've been working with them and their co-founders and some of their employees, and we did a company wide retreat and create a career out of it. And they may just be thinking like, well, okay, I'm going to go through this willy nilly until they get to a senior leadership role.
I would imagine you got that clients through happenstance, right? Like that's usually how most people end up in new niches or new areas of business, just
That's right.
happenstance. And then they're like, "Oh, I like this. This is
That's
interesting."
right.
Oh, and then they start exploring something they never got to do before, and then that turned into becoming
Yeah.
something that they specialize in.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, it's about providing value. That's what it is. It's being authentic, providing value, and when I say buzzwords, it's both using like trendy terminology, but it's also like perfect example in our industry in marketing. Everybody thinks that they need SEO, but and they'll come to me all the time. I'm looking for a quote to do SEO for my company, and like the first thing I like to ask them, why? Why do you think you need SEO? Who told you that you need to do SEO? And if they can't answer that, we have to dive deeper before we even say, is it worth it to provide you a quote? Maybe something else would be a better approach for you, right? So, you know, it's it's something that happens all the time, you know. But
I think you touched on it when we first started, actually, which is it's so tempting to be attracted to all of these shiny objects out there pitching you on, top 10 tricks to getting your next 100 clients, or, make 30K in the next 30 minutes. It's I think it's really easy for people to think that there's a silver bullet approach to all this. um, that sort of idea around delayed gratification for entrepreneurs is so huge and very present for me, where I realize that these are not things that happen overnight. They are things that take practice. They are things that really sticky content, something that's real. People see that and they're like, yeah, I want to learn more about that. I mean, I have my own coaches, and those that I've worked with aren't the ones who have, attracted me with some sort of flashy object. It's really how they continuously show up in a consistent way and authentic way that then has me wanting to learn more about what they do and how they do it. Before we know it, we're in a conversation, and then the next thing you know, you're working together. Well, what happened to all that? That strategy isn't working for me anymore. Or it turns out that I don't want to work with all of these different people. I want to work with this audience. How do I now target just this audience? I don't know. And they're starting from scratch all over again. Versus
Right.
I have had my struggles. I've faced those challenges early on and sort of worked out what strategies work for me, work for this industry, work for my clients. And the thing I also think
Mhm.
about is needy is creepy. So if your posts are coming off needy and you're grabbing at clients through your language, people are going to feel that and they're not going to respond to that in the way you want them to.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's for sure.
agreed.
That's for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
All right.
That's one of the first things I found out when I started joining social media is, you type certain things, and like you said, you go, oh, that didn't sound good. Delete, 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 delete. And normally it's the first two or three things that I type that I'm going to delete because it just in my mind it sounds great, because I'm having a great conversation with myself, but it's not what's going to resonate with people.
Is I talk to my clients a lot about this outside in thinking versus inside out thinking. And Jaron, what you
Yeah.
just explained was really much these external, whether conscious or subconscious, these external influences that make you think that this sounds good, this should be what I write. And then as soon as you stop that for a second and you actually look at it, read it, and then think about how you would want to say that yourself, it comes out a lot different. It comes out a lot more authentic, and it
Oh,
lands a lot better.
boy. Oh yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one thing AI will never do,
Overdue.
ever.
Yeah. That yeah, just
So,
yeah, coming back, a little bit circle what we were touching on, like we say, buzzwords, SEO, AI, all these things out there right now. That's what from our standpoint, from the marketeers, people are coming to us and saying, "Do you do this? Do you use that? How do I use this? How do I maximize this? How do I make that work for me?" And I'm like, "Do you need it? Do you use it? And if you used it,
no,
what is it going to change anything in your life? It might actually make it worse."
no. Well, Hakeem, it's been a pleasure. We thank you so much for your time on our podcast today. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Everything, when I met you in BNI, I was like, oh, this guy's authentic. I really like him. Right. So, and that's like when you get that feeling from somebody, those are the people that typically succeed. Right. So, you know, we're all praying for your success. Thank you again for being on the
Thank you.
podcast, and,
Mhm. Thank
keep on keeping on.
I think the one thing that has helped me these conversations and this conversation specifically is that this is a work in progress, as it all is. It's the kind of thing that you're
Yes.
continuing to learn. It's the mountain with no top. Once you think you've gotten there, you've got to keep climbing. You've got to keep learning. You've got to keep growing. So I appreciate that reminder, and I'll do just that. And I know you guys will too.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks.
Pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks again for everyone who's tuned in to the Sale and Scale Marketing Podcast. We appreciate your time and thank you for listening.